Let's move on to data migration. So data migration is, in all the schools that I've worked with, this is sort of an afterthought that actually I haven't really seen a whole lot of, and I'm not really sure why. But let me just sort of give a rundown of the different options here. On the left-hand side, we have client side, and that's really our preferred, well, recommended, I should say, method for doing data migration. That's when you say to your teachers, hey, you know, August 1st or whatever, we're cutting off these servers, so spend a few months now migrating your data from your old first-class server, your group-wise server, what have you. You know, do an export of your contacts, export of your calendar. There's some tools to help you with the mail. You know, get all your data migrated by yourself, because I think the reason we recommend that is that we find that a lot of users think they need a lot of data, and then when they actually spend a half hour looking at what they actually have now, they don't really actually need it. So, you know, empower your users to migrate the data on their own. Now that said, we do see a lot of cases where, for whatever reason, it wants to be done server side. So when I say server side, that's where the IT group sets up some tools to do just this massive migration. So we have two amazing tools that we've built out to do these server-side migrations. One is for Microsoft Exchange. So if you have mail, if you have contacts, if you have calendar, if you have contacts, calendar, those will just get migrated, and it's migrated quite seamlessly. It's a beautiful process, and it works. There is a caveat, and the caveat is that it does take time. It takes time, especially depending on how much data is being sent over. So if you want to go this route, then definitely plan to do it on some weekend or to throttle it so that it, you know, as you're sending potentially terabytes of information over, that it doesn't, you know, bring down your network. And also with server side, we have for Lotus Notes. So if you're running some sort of Lotus Notes, then we do a great job of migrating that data. For group-wise, we have a tool that will handle mail, and it handles mail very well. It handles that via an IMAP connection. Now, I know that we have partners who have gone to some lengths to find some workarounds to do other information such as contacts and other information such as contacts and calendar. But currently our tools don't handle those situations. So you would either go with a partner or do some sort of pushback on your teachers to do their sort of client-side migration, or you could write some code on your side to use our APIs. And then lastly with server side is if you're running some, I don't know, some old server like I was at my school that was like Ubuntu from 2006, then you might not be able to use any of our custom-made tools. So in that case, you would go into our control panel, which I can show you right now. Let me see, I haven't done this for a while. Authentication, reporting, email migration. So if you go to Advanced Tools, Email Migration, then what we allow you to do is from our servers, you set up an IMAP connection. So our servers will open up an IMAP connection to your on-site server, and then you give us a list of users to pull over. You give us a mapping of what their account is on your side, what their account is on our side. You tell us how to connect, and then we will spend, you know, a few days just slowly pulling up the mail for you so that it appears on our side. This is sort of the lowest common denominator. We recommend to use these server-side tools because they just generally are more robust. We spent a lot of time making sure that Exchange and Lotus Notes and in some cases group-wise do a clean migration. But if you find that you're running some just, I don't know, a Dovecat or a Courier server or something else that is not supported by our tools that we've already made for you on your side, then just open an IMAP connection and go that way. And then lastly is programmatic. So we have API. Oh shoot, I lost a bunch of the screen. So if we have, let me go back here. If we have APIs so that you can send up your mail, you can send up contacts, you can send up calendar. You can actually, this is an exciting one, we allow you to create documents using our APIs. So let's say that you have, I don't know, a network attached storage that just has reams and reams and reams of Word documents. Then you can use the APIs to go through each Word document, send it up, decide who uses it. So the APIs here I find actually really exciting. and I love using them, on my end. I use them at the school where I was working. So the APIs are exciting. A lot of them have wrappers. So we have a lot of Java wrappers around them, Python wrappers. For some of them, we have .NET and PHP as well. So if any of your teams are fluent in those languages, then definitely take a look at our Google Apps API section. So that was sort of a dive into data migration. Do you guys have any questions on that? What was that, a question? No, everybody's taking notes. Sorry. Oh, okay, good. Okay, excellent. Great. So data migration, we've actually seen a lot of schools that don't migrate any data. So it's one of those things where I feel like you sit down in a committee and sort of hash out what should we migrate, what shouldn't we migrate, and then your users always have the ability to go into their calendar application and do their own sort of migration. So my best practice recommendation here is for teachers, enable them to do client-side. Your superintendents, maybe some of the principals who are very vocal, help them out, do a server-side migration. But if at all possible, enable your users and teach your users to do their own sort of data migrations. That's a good way to do it. Okay, next, authentication. So I think this could be potentially one of the trickier things to plan out. So let's go through the three major options here. One is just straight into Google Authentication. That's where we manage the passwords. We manage password changes. It's a great way to do it. So this is exactly what I did at the school where I worked. We gave the teachers an initial default password, and then it was up to them to remember it. It was up to them to change it if necessary. What's nice about this is if they're using some sort of mobile device, let's say they're using an iPhone or an iPad, then they just plug the password in, the data syncs over. So that's sort of the easiest way to do it. It's easy to set up, and if you feel like the teachers can manage the password, then that's a great way to go. The next level up in perhaps complexity is do some sort of password sync. So let's say you have a password store on site, then that would involve using the provisioning API to take that password and then push them over. So what we've seen here is schools have set up a web page portal where teachers are allowed to change their passwords, maybe with a challenge question or what have you. So they walk through this password change, and then once the password has been successfully verified that it's a good password, then it gets shunted off to various places. It gets shunted off to perhaps the Active Directory server. It also gets shunted off to Google side. It might get sent also to the library or wherever else needs passwords. So this is if you know that your teachers are going to be having multiple logins in multiple places, then it's a good idea to take advantage of the provisioning API and to assist your teachers in decreasing the number of passwords they need to be remembering. And the last setup, sort of the enterprise solution that we see in very big school districts that we see. Actually, we actually see it in small school districts. We see it in many school districts. We see it in businesses. We see it in higher ed, is to use single sign-on. And single sign-on, the idea here is that a user, they go to log into Google Docs, and we know that for your domain, you have single sign-on enabled. So we automatically redirect them back to your server, your authentication server, where they type in their username, they type in their password, they click OK. We give you a redirect URL so that once that authentication has been successful, then they're automatically bounced back to our server with an SAML 2.0 message being posted. We verify that with a key that you've given us beforehand, and then we know yes or no whether or not to allow them into the service. What's amazing about this setup, and one of the reasons I recommend it, is that if you have, let's say, an Active Directory server on your side where teachers have already been trained to manage their passwords, then those passwords just automatically work for Google. If a teacher pushes Control-Alt-Delete, changes their password, hit save, then that password automatically now works with Google. With the other options, the Google Authentication, the password sync, those passwords either won't be synced over in the case with Google Authentication. In the case with password sync, it might take some time. If you're running it nightly, it might take until the next day for that password to be changed. So for your users, a very clean, nice way to do it with a single sign-on. I did want to jump into just a quick detail on single sign-on on the different ways you can set it up. So this is sort of an overview of what single sign-on would look like. So on the left-hand side, a user logs in, let's say with Firefox. They go to Google. Google automatically says, hey, you're using single sign-on. I'm going to bounce you back to your school's identity manager. Your identity manager handles the authentication. If all goes well, it sends them back to Google. They can use the service. Now, the thing to note here, though, is that it's only web clients that handle single sign-on. So if your teachers are planning on using IMAP, if they're planning on using POP, then those protocols will not be able to work with single sign-on. So single sign-on is a great solution. If you know that you need to be supporting these devices, then we'll have a little more complexity. And that complexity is handled by having another password store. So you'd have a secondary password store within Google. So if they want to log in, let's say with an iPhone, or if they're using like Microsoft Outlook over POP, then we'll attempt to authenticate them. We know that those protocols don't support the single sign-on, so then we fall back onto our native password store, and then we'll authenticate them with whatever password is stored, and then we'll allow them into the service. So this is the setup that we see in huge companies and huge universities. It's great for your users. It just takes a little bit of time to get it set up and running. So I think that was sort of a blitz through the different authentication schemes.